Nicole is growing in both size and strength as it moves closer to the Bahamas and eventually Florida. Hurricane warnings are now in effect for parts of the east coast of Florida. Tropical storm warnings are in effect for inland areas. This storm is massive, with tropical storm force winds extending nearly 400 miles out from the center. Preparations should be complete by Tuesday evening, as we will see conditions go downhill on Wednesday. There is also going to be an elevated flash flood threat and tornado threat as Nicole comes ashore Wednesday night into Thursday in Florida. We're going to break down the timeline hour by hour. We have got to stop meeting like this. What's up? I'm meteorologist Jonathan Kegas, and we talk and track all things weather on this channel. I am going to start with the hour-by-hour timeline for those that are looking for information to plan if they need to leave or not. And then we're going to get into some of the meat and potatoes behind this system, talk the meteorology, and talk some of the track scenarios when it comes to Nicole a little bit later in the video. Stick around for a couple of minutes for that. Unfortunately, Nicole already starting to get that look. It shed its subtropical portion of the name. It did complete its tropical transition, now fully tropical, and taking advantage of some of the relatively warm waters of the Atlantic, already starting to also develop a core. So as it does so, if it can develop that core, it's just going to be allowed to strengthen further as it starts to take a dive to the south and west. We'll talk about why it's going to move in that direction in a few minutes. Here we go, looking at the hour-by-hour forecast. I'm going to start with the future radar. The darker red indicates where we could have that real heavy rain. If you live in Florida, you know we've already been in and out of gusty downpours, and we are way out ahead of Nicole. This is what happens as we get in tomorrow. We're looking now at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Some of those outer bands already pushing in to really a lot of the Florida peninsula. Now, I do think this is the high-res future radar that we are looking at, is coming in a little too far south. I do think landfall will happen a little bit further north than what this depicts, but I do think it has a good handle on the timeline. You see, as we take a look at, this is about 5 to 6 o'clock Eastern time now, and you see potentially already making landfall in the Bahamas, maybe by this time already as a Category 1 hurricane. And then things start to get real nasty in Florida beyond 7 to 8 o'clock. So there we go at 7 and 8. And then you see the center starting to come on shore. Now, I do think this is going to, again, be further north than what her is depicting here, but it kind of paints the timeline in the right way, with the worst of the storm coming very early in Thursday morning or late Wednesday night. You see all those darker reds, these little kidney bean shapes. We're likely going to have several supercell thunderstorms push on shore that could spawn tornadoes as Nicole is making landfall. I'm going to show you some of the tornadic parameters in just a second. Fast forwarding in time, this is going to be moving rather quickly, so that is the good news with this, if there is some, because of the influence that is steering this. More on the steering in a second. But you see, as we get into, this is now 8 o'clock in the morning on Thursday, the heaviest rain out pushing towards St. Augustine, back towards the Big Bend, with the center potentially emerging back out over the Gulf of Mexico before it lifts back towards the Big Bend or the Panhandle later on Thursday afternoon. If you are finding this video helpful, please hit that thumbs up button. It really does help me out a lot. I'd also love to know where you're tuning in from. Post that in the comments below. We were talking about this in some of the earlier videos as well. The main component to this system is how big it is. That green little polygon there, that little bubble, that is where the tropical storm force winds extend out of, nearly 400 miles outside of the center. So this is going to be an extremely large and extremely impactful storm as it closes in on the Bahamas on Wednesday and then Florida on Wednesday night. So here we go in terms of the winds, and now we are looking at Wednesday afternoon. This is about 3 o'clock, and you see right here, we already have tropical storm force wind gusts pushing well inland into Ocala, getting into Jacksonville, St. Augustine, into Orlando, certainly already along the coast. Again, that is why your preps need to be done on Tuesday night, likely before the sun goes down. But look what happens here. We're having wind gusts pushing hurricane force all the way into Brevard County, especially on the coast, maybe even into the Volusia coast. Now, I mentioned before, we're looking at that same model, and I do think landfall is going to be a little bit further north, probably closer to the Indian River, Brevard County line. You see these wind gusts estimated right down into extreme southeast Florida of hurricane force. Again, take that, transplant that further north. So I am expecting hurricane force wind gusts really up and down the Brevard coast, maybe extending into Volusia County, and then pushing inland towards I-95 with strong tropical storm force wind gusts by Wednesday evening and early Thursday morning inland. We are currently looking at 11 o'clock in the evening. That's when this is happening. And then those wind gusts get even stronger, pushing into places like Orlando. That's a 61 mile per hour gust. We're going to fast forward out to Thursday morning now. We're looking at 8 a.m. We still have widespread tropical storm force wind gusts. This will no doubt take out power. Again, this is a large and powerful storm. We could have gusts inland get higher than what we saw with Hurricane Ian. Ian inland wasn't much of a wind threat. It was more about the rain through inland central Florida. But I do think we have an opportunity to see higher wind gusts with Nicole than what we saw with Ian. Ian also, thankfully, did not produce a ton of tornadoes as it moved inland. I do think we're going to have a higher probability of seeing tornadoes. Unfortunately, as Nicole comes ashore, we are looking at the significant tornado parameter, and we're looking specifically for that light blue color. As we get into that darker blue color on the side, that's when we start to see a bigger potential for tornadoes. And really, from the I-4 corridor into the east, that is going to be our biggest severe weather threat when it comes to Nicole. We're looking at about 4 o'clock in the morning, so really, again, late Wednesday night through Thursday morning. That is also going to be our tornado threat. You see that blue color starts to lift north as the center kind of jogs towards the Big Bend as we move into Thursday morning. This is at 10 a.m. now on Thursday, and those darker blues now pushing closer towards the Florida-Georgia border, certainly St. Augustine, Jacksonville, and then that tornado threat stays with us as we go into the afternoon as you move up into places like Georgia. We are looking at the UK Met model, looking at the steering. This is one of my favorite models to look at in terms of the steering flow and where the storm could be. Take a look at the red. If you're familiar with what happened with Hurricane Matthew and Hurricane Dorian several years back, those storms looked like they were coming to make landfall in Florida. Thankfully, they eventually didn't because they turned, of course, at the last minute. I don't think we're going to see that here unless we see the storm slow down significantly. Here's the deal. Again, all of this red represents high pressure. That's the sea level pressure there. That is high pressure. And again, clockwise flow around high pressure is going to help to first push this southwest and then push it west right on into Florida. Now, eventually, Nicole starts to turn north again. If Nicole were to slow down, it may have a shot to ride this ridge right on out, very, very close to the Florida coast. But there aren't many indications that show that could happen. Eventually, though, it does make that turn as the high pressure moves back out over the North Atlantic and then kind of tugs Nicole back north over the panhandle of Florida and then through the deep south and mid-Atlantic. If you have any questions, please post those in the comments below. I'll be checking them routinely through the evening and into Wednesday. Here is the latest forecast cone from the National Hurricane Center. You see now forecasting a Category 1 hurricane through Marsh Harbor in the Bahamas. This is looking at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on the 9th, so again, Wednesday afternoon. And then the cone widens out a little bit, still potential landfall from anywhere along Brevard County into Indian River County into Martin County as well. Right around midnight, give or take, of the night of the 9th, Wednesday, into the morning of the 10th on Thursday. You see it there, maximum forecast winds expected still of 75 miles an hour around the center with gusts of around 90 miles an hour. Eventually, that pushes inland towards the I-75 corridor by 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Thursday, November 10th. Now, we talked about that tornado threat. The dirty side of the storm, the worst side of the worst part of the hurricane anyway, is going to be that right side. And so anybody on the right of where the center is going to be under the gun for the worst conditions in terms of the wind speeds, the wind gusts, and then, of course, tornadoes. If you found this video helpful, I would love to have you on board in this awesome weather community. We talk and track all things weather together. Please hit that subscribe button. Also hit that thumbs up. Hit the little alert bell, and you'll be notified anytime we post new content. Please be safe if you're watching from the Bahamas or Florida. This is a very large system. It's a little different than some of the hurricanes that we've had to deal with. Please take this seriously again and listen to your local officials. Again, any questions, please post those in the comments, and we will catch you next time.